Europe has a problem with defense. Honestly, it has a lot of security problems, but there's one issue that might be more important than the others. In a rapidly changing world, Europe is trying to revive its military strength and strategy. Armies are being rebuilt, power is being reclaimed, and there's an effort to remember how to become powerful again on the global stage. But Europe needs a leader. And since the United States seems to be neglecting its transatlantic allies, it's clear that Uncle Sam won't be the one to do that job anymore. The strength of the European Defense Alliance needs to be enough for it to stand on its own 2 feet. It also needs a clear direction. What it really wants to be and what it is willing to fight for, someone needs to decide. This means that there needs to be one country in Europe that will take the lead and rise to the challenge. The future of the continent is at stake, and there is no time to waste. So, let's play a little. Pause for a moment, think, and identify which country you think is most suitable to lead Europe in the future. But no matter which country you chose, we're sorry to say that you picked the wrong one. Congratulations. Because almost every country in Europe except the one you chose believes that the country you chose isn't capable of leading. And now, they'll probably form a new committee and make a strong statement to explain why that decision was wrong. This is the sad truth. At a time when Europe desperately needs a leader, its problem in choosing someone to lead is actually deeper than most people think. So here are the countries that could lead the continent, and the reasons why Europe won't accept any of them. But before we start, if you're new to our channel, make sure to subscribe so you'll always be updated with videos like this. As we begin our discussion on what seems like a European tour of undesirable options, there's one thing we need to clarify first. There are some current leaders in Europe who are actively taking action when it comes to defense. It could be as individual countries or as part of the European Union or the NATO alliance. We will mention some of them as the discussion continues. And if there are times when we don't mention the name of a leader, it's usually because we will be discussing the broader political situation that prevents them from being truly effective. But overall, we are more focused on countries than on individuals. In the field of defense, national policies and decades-long strategies are more important than any individual leader. And because leaders in European countries change frequently, it's hard to rely on any particular leader being important for several years. So let's start by removing countries from the list. First is the United Kingdom. This is a country with a long-standing reputation for a strong military and one of the best records in modern wars. The British military is known for its high-quality training, discipline, and advanced technology. It is also one of the most active in modernizing its forces and has gained extensive experience in different parts of the world in the 21st century, especially during the War on Terror. Britain has this capability. It has a blue water navy, a very powerful air force, and its own nuclear arsenal. Their strategists are among the best in the world, and their special forces are always praised by other countries. In the field of geopolitics, Britain's influence is vast. It is a member of the Five Eyes Alliance, one of the founders of NATO, and the closest ally of the United States. But despite all of this, it is unlikely that the United Kingdom will gain the full trust of other European countries as the leader of the continent. One of the reasons is the fact that Britain spent the past decades saying it no longer wanted to be part of Europe. Although other countries do not directly blame the current leadership for Brexit and the tensions it caused, it is still clear that they prefer to be cautious and keep their distance. Until now, there are still doubts about Britain's true commitment to Europe. Influential voices on the continent also often question what Britain's true long-term vision is. Whether as part of Europe or as a fully independent country, Britain has money and expertise in defense, but it's not clear what its real plan is for itself. And if its direction is unclear, it's hard to trust that it won't turn its back on Europe again in the future. Aside from that, there are many other reasons why it wouldn't be an ideal choice for leadership either. A recurring theme here is that if a country is struggling to fix its own military, it's probably not a good example for others to follow either. And this is where Britain's problem comes in. Their armed forces aren't that big. There are about 137,000 active personnel and around 32,000 reservists. They're having a hard time recruiting new soldiers, and their army has been cut by more than half since the end of the Cold War. In addition, it seems that the public is losing confidence in their military. And when it comes to their goals, there's a problem with the recruitment system and the quality of life of the soldiers. So many potential recruits are backing out. According to a survey conducted in February 2025, only 11% of Gen Z adults are willing to fight for their country. The British Navy, which was once legendary for its strength, is now weakening. Up to 2/3 of their fleet require maintenance at any given time. Their personnel also continues to decrease, and there are doubts about whether they can still protect the English Channel in times of war. In the field of politics, Britain is also not in a good position to lead any international organization. The two main parties seem to be weakening, while the new alternatives still haven't gained enough support, especially on the global stage. And even though the military is modernizing in the traditional way, its leadership seems to be lagging behind in adapting to the rapid changes in warfare. Europe needs a leader who truly understands how quickly the nature of warfare is changing. And even though Britain knows this in theory, it has not yet fully implemented it in practice. So from Britain, let's move to another nuclear power in Europe, France. Sacré bleu. Please not you. On paper, France has a stronger reason to take the lead compared to Britain. Unlike the UK, it is a member of the European Union. And it has the second largest peacetime military on the continent, although it was recently surpassed by Poland. Like Britain, France also has one of the largest economies in the world. But there is one important difference. Its nuclear deterrent is capable. In the air and at sea, it doesn't rely solely on submarines like Britain does. France's military is one of the most advanced in the entire European Union. It has the characteristics of a true military power. It has its own aircraft carrier and blue water navy, locally produced advanced fighter jets, main battle tanks, mobile artillery, and a defense industry that is broader than most other countries in Europe. Like the UK, France also has enough experience in overseas military operations. But unlike the UK, France has recently actually conducted and managed its own operations abroad. Overall, other countries in Europe clearly trust France more when it comes to diplomacy, defense, and foreign policy. That's something Britain still doesn't fully have. But just because France is a better option, it doesn't mean it's already a good choice. For France, its biggest problems are in politics, economy, and diplomacy. One of these is the possibility of a major debt crisis. In the past year, it has become clear that France is struggling financially, and there have even been discussions in the international community about temporary solutions, including the possibility of a bailout from the IMF. That's something almost unthinkable for a country like France. But why is it no longer impossible? Because France's money problems are happening alongside a political crisis. The government keeps changing, almost as fast as a wheel of cheese rolling down the side of the Louvre pyramid after being pushed. No matter how strong France is in other aspects, these problems are enough for other countries in Europe to doubt whether it deserves to lead. And in addition to this, the current leader, Emmanuel Macron, has just over a year left in office, as of the time of writing. In the current situation, it seems certain that his successor will not be immediately accepted by the public. The possibility of Jordan Bardella from the far-right National Rally winning is increasing, which could change the direction of France, not just in defense, but for the entire country. And of course, there are also problems directly related to the French military, because in the case of France, it's not enough for the military to be strong. It also needs to be trusted. And this is where the issue comes in. In its previous operations in other countries, especially in the Sahel region of Africa, France did not leave a good impression. In fact, there are some governments in the region that chose to work with the Russian Wagner Group, which only worsened the security situation. If France is placed as the leader of Europe's defense, the entire continent could be affected by its reputation. Not only that, France has long had a reputation for using the idea of European defense as a way to advance its own interests, and then asking for the support of all of Europe. It's also no secret on the continent that for France, its own interests always come first. So it's not hard to imagine that if Europe agrees to France's leadership, it might just end up in a situation where other countries are always second. Another odd issue with France is how eager it is to lead. Instead of inspiring confidence, this causes doubt. It's not thank you, France, for leading, but rather it's a bit strange how much you want to be in charge. And in the end, for some, this is even the worst kind of doubt. The worst choice. Moving on from France, let's talk about the idea that Germany would lead Europe in war. And most likely, you already have a problem in mind here. But before that, let's first see why this idea makes sense. Germany has the third largest economy in the world, next only to the United States and China. For many years, it has been recognized as one of the main leaders of the European Union. It has played a major role in shaping the politics and economy of Europe. Although it is often criticized for being slow to make decisions and for having too much influence overall, other countries still see it as an asset, not a burden. Germany has a strong manufacturing sector, so it has the potential to become the center of Europe's defense industry in the coming years. Like France, it also produces its own military equipment, especially for the land forces. In addition, Germany is located in the center of Europe, so it can address defense issues from Western Europe to the eastern flank facing Russia. And the new leadership of Germany seems serious about strengthening defense and rearmament. They are actively pushing for a change in the country's perspective on European strategy, including its possible role as a main staging area in the event of a large-scale war against Russia. On the other hand, this is Germany. And Germany's track record in Europe during the 20th century is clearly etched into history. This is the country that twice tried to lead the conquest of Europe within just 30 years and failed both times. This is also the country directly responsible for the Holocaust and one of the main reasons for the two biggest wars in world history, with an estimated 100 to 120 million deaths. That is a legacy that Europe does not easily forget. And even today, its effects are still deeply felt in many countries in Central and Eastern Europe. Even in Germany itself, the weight of that history is still felt as the country continues to strive to learn from and confront the lessons of the past. Modern Germany is very different now. There is no doubt about that, but in countries that are naturally wary of military intervention, it is still easy to look at the current rise of remilitarization, the ascent of the AfD party, and the collapse of the former rules-based international order, and ask whether it is really a wise idea to once again give Germany broad military power. This is not simply a matter for other countries. A large part of Germany's own population also agrees with this kind of caution. For many decades, Germany has deliberately avoided large-scale militarization as much as possible. So while France is too willing to take the lead, Germany is the opposite. It's not clear whether the country or its public is really ready to take on this kind of role, even if given the opportunity. And naturally, Germany's history is the biggest issue in this matter. But that's not the only problem. Germany is the first country on this list that doesn't have its own nuclear arsenal. And like the other European countries we'll discuss next, this lack is significant, especially when we're talking about leadership in a continent with two nuclear powers. If Germany were to lead Europe's defense, it would change the entire strategic balance in which Britain and France currently operate. In the worst-case scenario, this could lead to a situation where a leader from Germany or even from another country on this list unintentionally puts Britain and France in a position where they have to consider using their nuclear arsenal. In addition, Germany faces its own challenges domestically. Even with a large budget for remilitarization, its implementation is slow due to red tape and political disagreements. Its current leaders, although more focused on defense, are only temporary, and there is no guarantee that the next government will continue in the same direction. And even though the German military is large and technologically advanced, it lacks modern combat experience and is still far from being fully combat ready. The new kid's got a gun. Look at Germany's eastern border and you'll see a country whose strengths directly address some of Germany's biggest weaknesses, Poland. After many generations under Soviet rule and before that under the Germans, as well as other conquerors throughout its history, Poland is currently in the midst of a major military transformation. Recently, Warsaw surpassed Paris and came to field the largest military in the European Union, and it has no plans of stopping. Poland plans to spend up to 5% of its GDP on defense this year. It also aims to build a peacetime military of over 300,000 soldiers, while rapidly upgrading its army, air force, and the entire defense industrial base, perhaps more aggressive than any other country in Europe. It's clear that Poland has learned the lessons from Russia's invasion of Ukraine and is determined to ensure that it will never again be swallowed by any expansionist enemy. Poland is truly serious about continental defense. It has a clear understanding of its own limitations and the capabilities it needs to develop. This is a country convinced that one day it will be the main front line of defense on the continent and possibly the one holding the line. Even if other allies decide whether or not to join, it is more prepared and quicker to adjust compared to Britain. It is not as driven as France to be the leader in everything, and it is more practical than Germany when it comes to immediate remilitarization. But even though this kind of determination is important, passion alone is not enough to become the true leader of the whole continent. And Poland knows this. The reason why its rearmament is so fast is not because it has a lot of money or is inherently a militaristic society. In fact, this process is painful and difficult for Poland, even though they know it is necessary. Poland is also not trying to surpass high-tech militaries like France or Germany. What Poland is doing is simply catching up and doing it quickly, because there is a huge gap it needs to close before it eventually faces Russia. After many decades under Soviet influence in the 20th century, Poland had a military that still largely resembled that old system. It relied on old Soviet equipment, and its military leadership was long anchored to the old way of warfare. Its defense industry had potential but lacked development and needed large investments in imported hardware just to begin serious modernization. Poland managed to make that transition, but it is still a military in the process of learning and unlearning old systems. So honestly, it still doesn't have enough experience or knowledge to take on the role of leader of all of Europe, and the Polish leadership knows this themselves. From a strategic perspective, Poland's focus is different compared to most of its allies in Europe. Its main concern is a clear threat from the East, Russia. That's why it is focused on being a frontline state, not on broader roles like power projection, continental coordination, or naval strategy. Capabilities it doesn't need to prioritize right now. Poland's military is growing, but it is still in the process of integrating itself into the broader European defense system, both at the strategic and tactical levels. In addition, Poland still lacks a fully developed indigenous defense industry. It has a significant dependency on the United States for some of its most important military capabilities, and it also relies on South Korea for certain aspects of its modernization. This means it has limited autonomy, which is not ideal for a country that wants to lead the defense of the entire continent. And despite most of Europe understanding Poland's reasons, and even admiring or agreeing with the speed of their preparations, there remains a small but intense question at the back of the minds of other European capitals. Poland is rearming quickly, gradually becoming a military powerhouse on a continent that for many decades has focused on peace and cooperation. And even though Europe trusts Poland's intentions, considering it a partner, that trust is still not enough to recognize Warsaw as a leader.